at least reading them is okay.
There he is, back from the mailbox.
Perfect. We have everybody. So
thank you, John.
It's 6:34, and I'd like to call the Finance and Advisory Committee to order. Let's do a roll call, starting with, we'll start with you, David.
Dave Wenger here.
Nick Tenson here.
Christina Shank-Hargrove here.
Valerie McCormick here.
And John Prulich here. So we have full attendance. And I think we're going to skip over our first agenda item, at least for the time being. We'll do our second one, which was a sort of finance update. And we're pleased to have Diane Katz here. Wanted to, if you haven't met Diane, just to put a face with a name. And she was kind enough to send the quarterly report ahead of our meeting. I doubt anyone's had a chance to take a look at it, but we certainly can, if anyone has, certainly, willing to talk about anything, but we can certainly flag it for future meetings. But definitely want everyone to welcome Diane to working with our committee in the near future. Thanks for joining us, Diane.
Welcome, Diane.
Thank you for having me.
Diane, may I ask a favor of you? Could you put a paper rendition of that in the FinCom mail cubby?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Sorry.
No worries.
Thank you.
And I don't know, didn't want to put you on the spot, Diane, but if there's anything you wanted to call out in the second quarter report, happy to discuss it. But if not, I think we'll probably review it on our own. But certainly let us know if there's anything we should specifically take a look at, if there's anything of note.
No, nothing that I can think of at the moment. It's just a matter of updating the figures that, Marissa compiles in all of the various pages. So I had done so through all of the balances in the, from our Munis software, and then also from the tax recap sheet. So, talk to Marissa here and there about, making sure that we had the correct numbers. So hopefully you'll find it in order, and it makes perfect sense and it ties out where it should.
Great, perfect. We'll take a look at that. In terms of requests of you, Diane, a couple things on my list. And I'm not sure if you're the keeper of it, but I know that when we did our Saturday budget meeting, there was the presentation. I think we got the handbook, but there was also a PowerPoint presentation that was, Marissa had shared it with us before she left, but then it was updated, and I think there are a couple of additional slides that were added to it.
Yes.
If we could get a copy of that, that'd be great.
That's for me. I can send that.
Perfect. And then the second thing, I guess, as we've got basically the information that was presented then. There have been, I think, a few tweaks, and there probably will be, a few tweaks as we get to the sort of finalized budget. And like the biggest tweak will probably be the school. I don't know if they formally adopted their revised budget, but I know they've had their some meetings on it. But to the extent there's any tweaks that then go to the overall budget items, because we're starting to work on our commentary, and there's certain places we'll need to insert the sort of precise figures, and clearly as we get the drafts of the warrant, that'll help as well.
So can I speak to that?
Sure.
We expect to have a finalized budget by around this time next week. We'll have a draft of the warrant, hopefully out the end of the week. I spoke to Tom McEnany earlier in the week, and he said that his goal was to have it to us by Friday. I'll share that with you and the Board of Selectmen as soon as we get it. From there, Diane and I are working on a couple of things with the budget, just to make you aware that the schools did make a cut very close to what we had asked them for.
Right.
Since then, we've had a couple of other numbers that got updated. We have been carrying, obviously, at this point in the year, we always start with projections. So we've been projecting, you know, for instance, Essex Aggie numbers and things, and some of those numbers have changed. So we're still playing in the margins. It's not big money, but we're still playing the margins. So Diane's keeping on a running list of the tweaks, as you call them.
Yes.
So when we submit the budget to you and the select board next week, we'll submit the list of what the changes were, so that you'll be able to identify them pretty quickly.
That'd be great. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, we certainly wouldn't need anything before that. And then I had, look at my list here. Bear with me for 2 seconds. I had a very specific question that, and we can certainly also do this offline, Diane, but I thought you might be able to get a quick answer. When we look at, when we do the sort of entire sort of rolled up budget that then has the line items, expense line items that all the town stuff, the school stuff, that then roll up into a total as well as a indicative tax rate. So the sort of presentation I'm looking at, there's a line item in unclassified called other financing uses. It looked like a lot of those were transfers, cash neutral transfers to different funds, as well as like HDC. But I was trying to understand, there was also one, I think that it was, now I've sort of lost the list here, but it was, I think it's something like transfers to unspecified revenue funds.
What was that?
Those transfers to unspecified revenue funds.
Okay.
And I apologize, I completely lost my place I had the actual line item I wanted to ask you about.
So is this a document that was in the booklet that Marissa prepares for you? Yeah.
It's the budget.
Yeah, the handbook, exactly.
Okay.
See which page it was on.
Handy here.
Anticipating your question, you're gonna want an explanation of what those are, unspecified revenue funds and other financing uses. Largely, other financing revenues, you have right. It's transfers to the stabilization fund, or the capital stabilization fund, things like that. But we'll dig in on the unspecified revenue funds. I think that's is it unspecified or unanticipated revenue?
I'm not sure. I mean, I can't believe I lost the page that was on. And part of the method behind this madness is for our forecast, I'm trying to plug in the budget numbers, and the forecast has line items. It all totals up to the same thing, but some of the items are comprised of different, they show up in different places because the forecast is meant to be a little more sort of user-friendly, not have much detail. Anyway, I'll find that offline, Diane. No reason to apologies for being less specific there, but I'm sure the minute I get off this call, I'll find exactly what the line item is, and I'll ping you with an email. And certainly I'll probably end up sending you a copy of this forecast. We're going to review some of it tonight, but then because we may have further questions down the road on that Marissa had sort of put together the original version of this, and then we've sort of taken it over. But we might want you to sanity check a couple things if we've got a calculation. And it follows the same sort of format to get to that indicative tax rate. So I'm sure you'll be able to, it'll definitely make sense to you.
Okay.
Any other questions for Diane or Joe for that matter? Because I want to be mindful of both Diane's time as well as Joe. I know you've got to run to the
I gotta go talk to FinCom about some stuff they want to do. So when you have time. What's that? What'd you say, Nick?
That's us, FinCom.
I mean, Conservation Commission. Sorry.
Okay.
Conservation Commission. Too many meetings today. I can't keep them all straight.
Yeah, I know, exactly. Well, yeah, if no one else on the committee has anything further for Diane, thanks for attending, and we look forward to working for you.
Okay.
Rather.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and feel free to shoot me an email, and whatever your specific questions are, I'm sure I'll be able to go through the files and get you the answers that you need without an issue. Okay. Thank you very much for having me. Good luck with your meeting. Thank you, Joe, and you have a nice evening.
We'll see you in the morning, Dan. Thank
you. Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Before I jump off, can I just ask? So, FinCom, we're still kind of on the schedule that we had agreed to. So, you'd be getting the draft warrant next week, and then, or later this week, and then we're looking for your book of recommendations. So by around the April 16th, if my memory serves, I checked the calendar earlier. That's when I have to have the final warrant language and the final and your book of recommendations, so that we can get it out to the printers.
April 16th that's Friday. Okay, perfect. Yeah. Okay, that gives us, that gives us then our next regular scheduled meeting is the 7th, but then we have the potential for a sort of interweek meeting on the 14th. So then, yeah, 6. That's great. I think that's.
Just want to make sure we're all on the same page on the schedule, so that I don't want you to feel like we're rushing you, but we also don't want to miss anything. So okay.
And was there any in terms of syncing with the BOS schedule? When are they going to have their sort of warrant hearing? We've done, because at times we've done them jointly in the past. Other times we've made our recommendations, and then
yeah, let me talk to Sean. Yeah, let me talk to, if you don't mind, I'll talk to Sean Farrell and see when he wants to do that. I think there's a date out there outlined in the calendar. Their next meetings are the 5th and then the 19th. So I would think that they'd either have to do it on the 5th, or they might want to do an extra meeting on the 12th. So I have to talk to Sean and see what he wants and how that works with what you guys, because you would be on, what did you say, the 7th and 14th? Or I mean, you'd be on the 7th and the 21st.
Yeah, our next normal one, so every 2 weeks, is the 7th, but then I'm guessing we'll probably have it on the 14th as well.
Okay.
Because usually around this time of year, we're doing as needed. We'll do weekly meetings.
Yeah, doing it, and the board's done that too in the past. So I'll let me double check with Sean. John, if I get out of Conservation Commission earlier enough tonight, I'll call Sean tonight, and then we'll try to get you an email answer tomorrow.
Okay, perfect.
Right.
The search for the new finance director, where is that?
So the advertisement closed officially last Friday. Bernie Lynch and I have been playing a little phone tag today. I was in and out of a lot of meetings. Evidently, he was as well, because we haven't synced up. He is supposed to be trying. His group will do the first cut and then give me applicants, a list of applicants that the screening committee can interview. That would include you, Nick. Nick, we're going to work with Nick and Sarah Johnson and the HR director, Michelle. And then I was thinking that we might add Chief Stevens and Diane to that mix as well for first round interviews, just to make sure we have a good sense of who should be put forward as finalists. So I'm hoping to have a list of names next week sometime. And then Nick will be in touch to try and work out a schedule for interviews.
Good. I've had my second COVID vaccine, so I'm all set.
All right, great.
Excellent.
And they may even be done by Zoom anyway. I mean, we'll have to see how that winds up working out. So.
Okay.
Joe, before you leave,
yep.
What's the status of the water study?
The Board of Selectmen chose not to put it on the warrant article, but we, and just as an aside, it's separate. Two things that are going on. The town is already investigating with Tim's help and our engineer and myself. We're investigating some grant funds that could fund a water study. We're also replugging into Senator Tarr's regional group on drought task force. They're looking to get a bunch of our communities, Ipswich, Hamilton, Wenham, for instance, Topsfield, out of the Ipswich if they can, and they're looking for alternate uses. So we're going to be working with them in tandem while we pursue a grant opportunity, and we're going to try to build some scope for studying water stability issues for the town as part of the master plan. So so we got 3 things going on. We're not going to have a warrant article to take out an extra $100,000 right now, but we will be starting right now 3 different ways to try to handle the water, and then we'll see if we need to take need a water study article in the future, either in the fall or next spring.
Are you envisioning any citizen participation in any of that?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I think the first step is to identify what are our likely sources outside of the Ipswich, and what would be needed to pursue those. So that's a little bit behind the scenes, but
staying behind the scenes, I've had the opportunity to speak to Dave Thompson.
Yeah,
quite knowledgeable, I think.
Yeah,
in this area. So I respectfully suggest you might reach out to him.
We're maintaining contact with Dave. Absolutely. Dave talks to Tim and I regularly, and we'll maintain that connection. So.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Great. Anything else for Joe before let him go?
There haven't been any changes to the warrant, right? Or like what's going to be on it?
No. They voted to close the warrant with those articles on that meeting a week and a half ago, and that's what Tom's putting together in the warrant. There's no additions.
And the one thing, and I can't remember because the BOS meeting went very late. There was the one at the bottom of that list talking about the Patent Homestead conservation restriction. Was it determined to actually take it off the warrant, or that it would just be no action? I couldn't remember.
It has not been included on the warrant at this point. That's part of the reason I'm meeting with the Conservation Commission now. Sean had a meeting with the chair of the Conservation Commission prior to the select board meeting, and we're trying to work out an alternate to having that article on the warrant. Gotcha.
Okay. But to your earlier point, nothing has been added in addition to that was on that list.
So. Nothing has been added at this point. There was a citizen petition article that came forward after the warrant was closed. It was submitted Tuesday morning. So we're trying to figure out how to address that.
What was the topic, if you can?
550 Highland Street.
Okay.
So that's not my that's not my decision to make. I'm letting the board kind of walk with that one for a little bit. We'll see where it takes us. So.
Yep, that's no need to talk about that any further. All right, I think that was all. That's certainly all I had for you, Joe. And
okay, thank you.
If anyone's got anything else, otherwise we'll let Joe run to his next meeting.
I think that's a new sweater. It makes you look svelte.
I appreciate you calling me svelte. I have lost 21 pounds in the last 6 to 8 weeks.
That looks like it.
And as always happens when I lose weight, I lose it in my face first. So everybody thinks I lost more than I actually lost. But I've only lost 21 pounds. But this was a Christmas present. I haven't worn it very much, but this was a Christmas present from my kids. So.
Great.
Thanks.
Well, congratulations on the weight loss. It's great.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I need the encouragement because I get at least 40 more pounds to go. So I'll take my 1/3 of the way there.
You can do it.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night,
Thanks,
Joe.
Bye.
All right. Hey, so I hope everyone saw the email, and I think we should talk about it briefly from Rudolph Pisano, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. I tried to invite him to talk about he was the I should say purported opponent to the town hall renovation, but I I tried to invite him, but apparently the emails were going into his junk email folder. He got the last one, and he did reply at least with some of his concerns, which I think are interesting. And I didn't know if Mike or someone else was going to join us from the Town Hall Building Committee tonight. But that being said, it might make sense to at least, look at his concerns and sort of understand how we think that, they're valid concerns, and or at least I should say they're questions that definitely need to be answered as part of this process, be it communications or at least as the outreach sort of happens to the residents of the town, because I think there are questions that others are going to ask, and questions that are probably going to come up at ATM.
So John, may I suggest we get that communication to Mike Toomey?
Yeah, I would definitely say we forward that on to him.
And then I think, Nick, there's a meeting of the committee tomorrow?
No, it's not until April 1.
Oh. Okay,
they pushed it out 2 weeks.
Any particular reason other than fatigue?
What they're doing is they're waiting for, I'm hesitating because I'm trying to get her name, Kristen Alexander, to pull together the information from her survey. And I was going to say that she's also should be getting those concerns. She is pulling together, she has created a survey. I don't know, has anybody here on the committee seen this? It comes out of the, it's going to be on the town website. I think it's going to come from other places too, but it is going to be a survey asking, it looks like about 10 questions regarding the people's interest, people's knowledge and reasons for approving or disapproving, so that they can get a sense of what's going on there. But certainly both Mike and she should get those changes, those concerns.
Right. Yeah. And I had seen the traffic on the survey. I actually, I sort of interested in seeing the survey questions. I sort of intentionally didn't want to take the survey, only because I didn't know how many people were responding to it. I don't want to skew the results.
I know,
because I mean, in some sense, it's, we need to hear from the people, since it was actually voted down last fall. We need to hear from the people that voted it down. And that's the problem, is because a lot of the people that voted it down aren't necessarily communicating. They certainly didn't show up at town meetings to voice similar concerns. So I'm hopeful that the survey is getting out to a bunch of people. But I think sort of voicing these concerns to her and Mike will be important. I don't know if you took a look, since you've been closest to it, Nick. I don't know if you saw the email and had thoughts regarding.
I have it up. I have it up now, and I'm taking a look at it. The
remote hybrid sort of work. I hadn't really been following anything that Governor Baker had said. Had you? I know that's always been a question in the back of a lot of people's minds. Is what might change because of the pandemic and remote working. And I know that I think some of the communications are supposed to address that, but I do think it's an important thing we need to, they should be getting out ahead of, I should say.
I didn't know that the state government actually is going to be reducing or moving to a hybrid model. Well, I don't understand his question. Will the town hall be functionally obsolete before renovations are complete?
I think that's meaning the hybrid may diminish the need for in-person service.
Is that true of schools as well?
I don't know.
No, I don't think so.
But why not? I mean, it's the same thing, isn't it?
The schools are going back full time, so they're going to have all their kids in there.
That's a good point, Nick. Would that be true of schools as well?
I'm being a little curt when I say that, or cute when I say that. I don't think it should be that way, but I also don't think the town hall should be that way. So if there are ways to reduce the amount of people in the town hall, that's great. But I don't think it's going to eliminate the need for having a town hall, period.
Right. I think we need to be armed with information as to that. Rather than
exactly.
Make a conclusion.
I mean, you're right.
Because, for example, and I'm just, speculating here, but if it could be that, half the state employees are going to be remote, but they could have a certain character that lends itself to remote working. Whereas, we don't have that many town employees, so they may be doing functions that you can't do half of them remotely. It may only affect, say, 10%. I'm not even sure. I'm making up numbers, but I think understanding the specifics and sort of differentiating the town situation, if it's applicable, from the state situation would be important.
It's a valid question. I think that companies are doing the same thing. They're going to remote in a lot of places. And so why can't the town do more of that?
Well, this does set aside the concern or the need to preserve a historic building for the town as well, that it's a kind of an iconic landmark for Hamilton.
That's right. We don't want to convert it to a Hollywood set with just the facade.
That's right.
Nothing behind it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, my first reaction was that, and I agree, there should be some actual thought about this, but the people who are working in the town hall, a lot of those things it needs to be open to the public. People need to go there and do things. You can't, and those employees can't be working from home. If someone has to go and pay something or go look at the building, I guess you could submit plans online and things like that. But and I think the state government is working remote is a little bit overstated, at least from what I know from the Department of Industrial Accidents. The governor put out a request to agencies to take a look at what they can do to reduce, use the remote virtual and online stuff that we've been doing this past year to reduce expenses by reducing the footprint of buildings and things like that. But I don't think it's a done deal. And there's actually a huge uproar by the attorneys at the Department of Industrial Accidents against that. So, to what extent our state workers are really going to be working remotely, I don't know. I know there's a push for it, but that doesn't mean the town workers need to do that. And and again, it depends on the specific things that the employees are doing. And again, all right, so if we could have some employees working from home, we still need a town hall, and redoing the one we have is still a much better deal than building a newer, smaller one. It won't save us money if 2 out of 10 of the employees can work from home. We still have to redo the town hall. And there's no way that everyone's going to be working from home. We can't have a virtual town hall yet.
That's interesting. We should look at that, though.
Can we do a completely virtual?
I don't know. It should be looked at.
Yeah, maybe that's what he means. Will it be functionally obsolete? Probably won't be functionally obsolete by the time it's done, but maybe in 15 or 20 years it will be. Everything will be completely virtual. But on the other hand, maybe the gas and oil market will collapse and we'll be back to using horses or something.
Good, more manure for the fields.
Right.
So, so we're going to forward the email to the town hall building committee.
Yeah, would you like me to do that?
I think that makes sense.
Take care of that, or
yeah.
do you want? Okay, I'll take care of that.
I think that makes sense, Nick.
And the questions about the school budget. So apparently there's a rumor that there's going to be an additional 2 or 3 million from the stimulus bill. I don't know, is there anything we can do with that?
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't really, yeah, I mean, maybe you want to, not necessarily for the email thread, Nick, more cut and paste the relevant portions of it. And I'm sort of reading this in real time too. Because I hadn't heard anything about them getting additional money from the stimulus bill.
Yeah, I mean, one response to Mr. Pisano would be, you know, I wouldn't expect any increase in town assessment if that's true. Well, unfortunately, that's not how the school budget works. You know, he's misunderstanding how the whole process works.
Well, right, that's exactly right. I mean, we'll have some of the surplus, but it takes like a year or two for any surplus that they get to actually work its way through. That's if it was, you know, 100% pass through, which we all know that that never happens. But it could certainly mitigate future increases. But who knows? Because it's another thing. It's one of those things like the devil's in the details. It's you know, is the 2 to 3 million for what is it actually for? Is it
right.
straight up aid, or is it actually, you know, funds for, you know, PPE, for, you know, other things that have been caused because of the pandemic? Right. So I don't know.
Things that aren't in the school budget anyway. So I guess just for the, do we think we're responding to this email, or should I just say for the sake of this recording, in case Mr. Pisano watches it to get the answers to his questions?
Yeah, I mean, because I briefly responded and said I'll bring up these points at our meeting tonight, and certainly share them with the rest of the committee. But yeah, I'm only reading the stuff about the schools now, so I didn't know if he. I'm happy to respond after the meeting and really, I mean, on the school things, it's not clear, but it's probably not going to be certainly a one-to-one reduction in the assessment.
Right, and just I guess to say it for the record, the school committee makes a budget request to us. We vote it for it or against it, and once they have the money, they have the money, and we don't have any control over how they spend it or how much they spend it or what they spend it on. And if they have a surplus, then it goes into, you know, they'll know at the end of, after the end of the year, whether they've had a surplus, and then they can put it into, they don't call it free cash, but they call it something else, right?
It's the E&D, and then it sort of takes, you have to almost wait another fiscal year before it actually becomes a true surplus.
If the schools do get some kind of infusion in terms of the federal legislation, school committee is free to do whatever it wishes with that money.
Right.
There's no obligation to do anything in terms of budget reductions or netting out that amount from town obligations.
Right. And that's not us saying they can do whatever they want. That's how it works. The town has no control over what they do, is what we're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, they do have a surplus. Then eventually it goes into their E&D fund, and then they have that available to use in the future, potentially to reduce the amount that they're asking for the town in the future.
Yeah,
but that doesn't change anything. If they get an extra 2 or 3 million, that doesn't change anything about how much they've asked for this year, how much they're going to get from the town, how much the town needs. It's not going to change anything about the assessment that we're asking for.
Right, and they can spend it all and have no E&D.
Right.
Right, exactly. They'd certainly have to answer for it at the end of the day in future budget cycles. But and if it's still in the ED, at some level, it gets then automatically returned to the two towns. Which this might actually be, if this was all true, it might be enough to trigger that. But it's not an automatic process, and it's neither immediate nor automatic. I think are the keys.
Right. So we're not going to ignore those questions, but I think we need to wait. Nick, you're going to distribute those to Kirsten and Mike, and maybe I think Patrick Reffert's involved in some of the logistics, as well as, of course, Joe. We ought to get as much knowledge, or John, you ought to get as much knowledge before we respond, I think. So we ought to try to expedite that informational supply and then get back to this gentleman.
I would actually suggest responding about the school budget thing and saying that the town hall building committee, that the other questions have been forwarded to them. And they're taking in something like they're taking in people's, getting information from everyone about what people's concerns are and what they're thinking, and they're working on that.
After the house.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the way to sort of bifurcate it, which is, I'll thank him again. I've already thanked him. Thank him again for the contribution. Let him know we've forwarded the concerns to the town hall building committee, and I'll also throw in if you survey that he should take the survey, but then respond on the school and stuff, and that someone will be responding further on the questions he's raised about the town hall. Because I think ultimately it's not just taking the concerns. I think some reply to him once we've got the information makes sense. It doesn't have to necessarily be from us as FinCom, but you could potentially turn an opponent into an advocate if his questions are answered.
Right. I'm trying to read.
To respond positively to the CPA part of this.
I was trying to read Nick's lips. I couldn't quite.
I'm sorry, Kathy was our son and his wife. They put their house on the market, and it went on Friday, roughly. Saturday they had an offer which was about 90,000 or so more than they put it on for.
Wow.
Something ridiculous.
I know.
It was. We just found the number. Kathy was just giving me the number just now, and we're just flabbergasted.
Wow,
yours was a quick turnaround too, right, Valerie?
Did you sell yours, Valerie?
I sold mine, yeah. But now I have to find one, and I'm gonna have to pay that much over asking.
No, you do what they do. You can come move in with our house.
I might be leaving my sister's basement for a while. We'll see.
That's what they're doing, is they're moving in, and they're going to wait till the market changes. So we've got it could be a couple of years.
How quickly did yours sell, Val? Or was it really quickly?
Yeah, we didn't even go on market. We got ready, and then within my realtors group, someone wanted to see it, and I said, okay, fine. And then they gave me what I wanted. So you know what?
Perfect.
That was it. Done. So that was great. But now I have to find something.
It's that flip side.
I've already lost out on 3 properties, so we'll see. I'm trying to find Hamilton. I really am.
It's a bit scary when you think about it.
Kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's like the tulip inflation. I don't know if you guys ever knew there was a, how stocks go up and up and up sometimes, and then they crash. Well, tulip bulbs did that back in the 80s.
Oh, sure, yeah. No, I always think about that when I think about crazy speculative markets that have no inherent value necessarily, not necessarily, but when I think about these NFTs you keep hearing about, which I still can't wrap my head around, how someone thinks they can own a digital asset that anyone else can access. But at any rate, Sounds like tulips to me.
State.
All righty. Sorry, I didn't mean to digress, but David, you brought it up.
All right. So why don't we switch over to, and we sort of started to get into it. So I sent around that list that was the list of warrants. If we want to take a look at that in conjunction with, I did a sort of skeleton version of the commentary, really trying to get everything that was in that list of articles into the form for a commentary, including either the last ATM or in some cases STM commentary in there, which I've highlighted just so people have it as a reference point. For some of them, I think you can reuse some of that information. Certainly with the town hall renovation stuff, there'll be some stuff that could be reused. It'll have to be updated, obviously. I tried to. We don't have a warrant yet, so it was a little harder. So I tried to guess as to where the articles were going to fall in terms of the numericals. But I think it makes sense to sort of walk through them and with two things in mind, sort of our process for getting to a recommendation, and then also who is sort of responsible for the commentary. So if we want to, does everybody have that in front of them? We can start walking through it.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't have it in front of me. Let me open it. All right. So intro, I can come up with I can draft something here for the next time we review this that everybody can take a look at. I think a lot of it will be similar to the things that were put into the annual report. Consent motion, we'll figure that out. I don't know if they're prior year bills. It was on the list. I'm not sure if there was anything specific in mind, but I think we'll see that whenever the warrant comes out next week. Wage classification. I don't know if maybe your question is whether we have that. Do we have all that information from the budget handbook? I can't even remember. But if anybody wants to take this one, I can handle prior year bills if there is one. Since I've sort of got the master document, it's probably plugging a one sentence into that if there is one. But if anyone wants to either track down to do the compensation one, that's open. Certainly some of these things are a mix of very little that goes into it. And I think the way we've done in the past is ideally it's the ones that have more commentary. We'll try to divide those as evenly as we can.
I mean, I can do it. The compensation classification table. That's something that I still don't get. I can figure it out, but if somebody doesn't already know I want to do it. You want me to do it? I'll do it. No one else is elbowing me aside, so.
You know, we will put you down, Christina, for at least temporarily, and then we'll start trading them as we go through the list.
Okay.
Because I'm looking at this, I'm like, oh, there's a fair amount of commentary there. I'm like, I think maybe like Marissa just sent most of this to me in an email, because I'm trying to think in the past, like, how did I actually get this information?
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's fine. I'll figure it out if I. So okay.
You know, capital is one. It's another one that has, you know, it's really just putting in the specifics about the individual things. I'm happy to take this one, at least temporarily. We'll even stuff out. 2-4 is the biggest one. Which also, if it makes sense, I almost feel like whoever does 2-4, they're not going to do much else in a sense, because I feel like this is going to have town plus school. So maybe I take 2-4 too, although if someone wants to, I certainly wouldn't dissuade anyone. I could take 2-4 if somebody else wants to take capital.
I'm sorry, I was writing that email to Mike. Can you tell me where you guys are? And because I realize I'm not participating properly. What are you looking at?
So the commentary. So we're walking through the commentary where I've taken all of the warrant articles that were on that list, plugged them into the old commentary. So it's essentially, I've guessed at what they would be numbered. Numbers
is this a commentary that was sent out before?
Yeah, it was sent out about, like, I don't know, 20 minutes before the meeting.
Oh.
Earlier today, it says stuff.
Yeah, stuff.
Oh, stuff. Okay. Okay. Draft summary or the final stage?
The 2021 ATM FinCom report draft, I think is the title of it.
I don't know how to get that on my screen while I'm talking with all of you, so.
Yeah, you can also look at that list that was also part of it. Can you pull that up, David?
I have the list,
because all the lists are, and I'll just instead of referring to, I won't refer to them by numbers. I'll just refer to them by what they are.
The potential warrant articles, is that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I have that list.
So the ones in play now, Christina's going to take the comp classification table. Someone needs to do capital, which is really just describing the things that are in the.
I would be happy to take capital.
All right.
But I don't know where we are. I still don't have it.
What's that?
He doesn't have the document yet.
Oh, I see what I'm doing. I'm got TOH, which I guess is town hall, town.
So he's.
That was the audit one, that was a separate email.
Yeah.
He sent 2 emails.
Oh, here it is. It looked as it was going to be a Excel file. I see there's some other things in here. So it's the ATM what?
2021 ATM FinCom report draft.
The first one after the Excel spreadsheet.
Oh, it is. Okay. There we go.
So John, on this list I don't have the compensation classification table. I just have the town budget article.
It's, I see compensation classification table is 4th from the top.
See, I don't know which one I have. The 4th from the top on mine is merge, pool, and rec revolving accounts. So I apparently don't have the right one.
Well, let me make sure I didn't see the old one. Let me just see what I sent. Sorry about that. If I did.
Anyway, I don't. we can just use verbal descriptions.
Yeah, no, well, exactly, yeah.
So Nick will do capital. John will do general town appropriations. Then there's water enterprise budget.
Anyone for water?
I'll do that. Whatever it is.
That's basically the it is really just it's the article that approves the full budget for water.
Okay.
I think the commentary from last year will be helpful. Numbers will have to be updated, which should all be in the warrant, but
all right.
The next one, the annual financial actions. Usually this is, it's basically a transfer of like $2,000 from the cemetery fund. Sometimes there's a transfer from the Clark fund. Well, the details will be in the warrant. And then there's always a amount that's from the Water Enterprise Fund. I mean, I'm happy to take this one only because it's literally probably going to be plugging in the numbers, the highlighted numbers.
Well, maybe I should do that one. And I'm just looking ahead because there's the town hall building project one.
Do you want to take that?
No, maybe Nick should take that.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, yeah.
And I'll take the capital. And I'll take the capital instead.
Oh, I'll take capital. It's fine. I don't think it's going to be that difficult.
That is still like the town hall one is going to be because it's probably CPC and town hall.
Yes.
I would probably take both those, Nick, and yeah, if Christina wants to do capital.
Okay.
And I'll do the financial actions too.
Sure.
Well, let's stay in order. Where are we?
Where we just did annual financial actions, which was 2-6 in the commentary.
2-6. This is just transfer of funds, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next two are effectively town hall. I mean, one of them CPC, so it also includes the patent escorts. But
okay, I'll do that.
So you do that, and town hall is the next one, 2-8.
Okay.
And then we'll just make Valerie do everything else. No, there are a lot. I thought there was not going to be.
Well, yeah, I mean, it seems like there's not much, but there's still a lot of them are not necessarily controversial, but there's, yeah, it adds up. The revolving funds one, we'll have to add the stuff about the merger of, and I don't know if it's one article or two. Like, I don't know if one article will be merging the pool and the rec, and the second will be just the approval of spending limits. The approval of spending limits will, I think you can largely use the format. Whoever does this can largely use the format. And I'm happy to do 2-9 because I've done these I feel like every year I do the revolving fund ones. They're pretty well set to go. It's really just plugging in numbers to update them. I think a lot of the commentary will still be true. Um,
2-12 should definitely be the.
What was that?
Whatever, but definitely 2-12 patent.
Yeah, 2-12, and I think that one we'll probably want to put additional commentary, but I think 2-12, all it is transfer. It'll have to be different in the sense that there's not a general appropriation. It's transfer from the patent fund. So we'll see the details in the warrant when it comes out.
But the 2-10, did we pass that by that or?
Yeah.
Doing 10 and 11.
Yeah. So,
but 10, is there anything there?
HDC. Yeah, so I think HDC will be the transfer of the meals tax to the HDC.
And that's all it is, right?
Yeah, I think it makes sense in our commentary to effectively talk about, some of the stuff we talked about with Rick at the last meeting and really talk about the sort of give an update as well.
Essentially what you're doing is we're moving away from Willow Street, and that is closed. I guess there's some commentary on that, but that's all there should be.
Yeah, I can do the HDC, but there was no meals tax collected. Essentially, what figure are they using for meals tax?
Well, no, there was some. It's really small. I thought it was like $7,000 or something like that.
And has HDC agreed? Is that a matter of contest, or is that?
I don't think it is. I think it was. I feel like I think I've got this right. It was vastly reduced because of obviously the pandemic, but the thought was they didn't want to reduce HDC's zero. Even though they basically had just closed Willow Street. So I think it was going to be a 50-50 split between the town and HDC, and it amounts to like a transfer of, I think, like $7,000, or it could even be $7,000 divided by 2. But it's...
I'll check on it.
Yeah, I think the key thing here, David, is really just to update the fact that transaction is closed, and Rick was going to pull some numbers on the, what the anticipated sort of tax benefit to the town because of closing this deal is. And really, letting people know that, at least from my vantage point, that, the HTC isn't just a money suck from the town, or at least from the meals tax revenue that's generated, that it's actually they're net trying to generate revenue for the town. And this is a sort of success story that we can point to. And then, they're looking for other development opportunities now.
And again, it is affordable housing, correct?
No, not necessarily.
I don't think so.
A lot of times there are projects potentially and involve affordable housing.
You mean Willow Street?
Yes, well, right. There's a portion of it, but that's just because it's a mixed use property. But that's not necessarily their.
No, I understand it's not their goal, but the fact that it was partially what do you call it, subsidized housing, it does support. Doesn't that give us some? It helps the whole town.
Credit.
Yeah, it's another reason to talk about this closing of this HDC, this Willow Street.
Yeah, I mean, it's effectively, if you think about it, sort of three, like the closing, like, the three huge benefits were, A, it was a, you get a net out of the costs associated with it, but it was a net positive transaction just on the, the asset. B, the development will then actually increase the tax rolls by, Rick's going to give us that number. And and C, then because a portion of the residential part was going to be affordable housing, actually, is, you know, a modest increase in our affordable housing, which, you know, we need to be having these, you know, these small incremental gains to from these projects in lieu of, you know, a huge project. So they're all three really important things.
So we're assuming we're recommending this item.
Yeah, I was going to say. And then if anyone's against this, actually, I tried in the commentary to highlight, you know, the actions so that I'm not necessarily that they are still subject to vote. But yeah, I'll put down my cheerleader pom poms for a second.
So I'll do that one.
All right, 2-11. OPEB. I don't want to take it away from you, David. If
okay,
you're off in.
What does that stand for? What do those initials stand for?
Yeah.
Valerie's got 212. Then we need someone for 213. So this will be the, I think a lot of the commentary can work here. It's really, this is the, I think it's 349,000 that we're transferring to sort of top up our, meet our financial policies on that. Does anybody want to do that?
I can do that one too. I feel like I'm doing the little, just kind of normal financial transfer kind of ones.
Sure.
But yeah.
2-14 will be.
Did he just say they were going to take the water study out?
Yeah, so 2-14 is going to be removed. So let's get that one. 3-1.
Tobacco Road project.
I have really little background. In fact, I should probably say zero background on this.
I think I did this last time, didn't I?
Yeah,
and I information as you do, but I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, if you want to do this one, this is some sort of, I think it's some sort of I think it's some approval we need to get by town meeting action, and I think it's a conservation restriction. That's all I know, and I'm not even sure that's correct. But
they use. I think I vaguely remember if they use it, and we have to approve their use, but then they pay us to use it or something. So.
Yeah, and what I don't know is if it's. But I'm not sure, this is just the old commentary. I'm not even sure it relates to this. Like, I'm not sure if it's the, if it was the gun club use, or if it was actually, and it may be, or if it was something related to the paving project going on.
Paving, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
That's what it might be related to. But you may want to just check in with Joe on that, Valerie, and see what the specific. And we'll also know a lot more. Sometimes when you get the warrant will get you 90% of the way there in terms of the description on that, especially if it's a non-controversial one, which I think this is, because I've heard like no discussion on it. 3-2 is so that's for the pilot for the solar array that's being contemplated for the new library roof.
I don't know. Is this is for this year, right?
This is for this year. Yep.
We haven't discussed this, have we?
No, we have not.
Good, because I just thought I was just getting old.
Yeah, no. This is it's on the list, and it's been always sort of contemplated that since the library roof was going to be in the capital, well, really not the capital, it's more the assessment we get from Wenham, but it's in the budget for that new roof, but that they were going to put solar panels up as part of that project so that they could reduce energy costs. And but it does require town action to actually do the pilot with Select, or who, I'm not even sure it's Select. This is from a, I should have actually highlighted this because I took most of this language from the pilot warrant article for the solar array on top of the water, whatever you call that, on Pine Street.
And who's the pilot with?
I don't know. I don't know if it's Select or if there's a different. I'm guessing it probably is, because I think they've. There's a good relationship there in terms of the solar company, but I'm not 100% sure about that. It could be a completely different. So I think Select was the people that they had used to bid out certain things on. We're looking at potentially for the school. Do you remember when I think someone came in, I thought it was Select, and did a presentation for us? This is like 3 years ago. I don't know if you remember that, Nick.
Vaguely.
Yeah.
Yeah, they came to the COA
and I don't think actually, looking at the language here, I'm not sure the warrant article actually is to approve a specific solar vendor. It's more to approve the concept of entering into a pilot agreement. Then you leave it to the discretion of the town manager, who then I'm assuming takes probably multiple sort of bids.
I assume they settled the roof issue, whoever was paying for the roof.
Oh, on the library? Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I think my recollection is it's included in the budget. So it's now in the full budget assessment for, so they want to obviously do it at the sort of same time.
I think what's throwing me is that when I see the word pilot, I think in terms of tax-free entities like the schools and the Pingree and Gordon Conwell.
and airplanes.
And airplanes, yeah. But so I get confused with this. Who is it that is supposed to pay taxes and doesn't, and therefore is paying us in some other means? That's what
it's odd that it comes in that way, right? It was. It's really. I think it's basically. For whatever reason, you need town approval to have some company contract with the town for its use of land. I guess that's not. I don't know. That's not even really a good answer, because
they're basically renting the roof of the library, so they're using the roof to, create income for themselves.
Right.
It's not really in lieu of taxes, but it's additional money that we'll be getting because somebody's using the roof, which nobody else can really use the roof other than a solar company.
Right. Great.
So it's additional. So we're taxing them for using the roof.
Like a cell tower, if you're not using
right, exactly.
You attach one to the building and you get payment.
So it's not pilot then.
I think technically it might be, but I don't know.
It is, because we're kind of taxing them, but it's not exactly a tax. So it's a payment that they're making. That's not really a tax, but it's not. Right. Yeah, it's not really in lieu of taxes.
Yeah,
it's not in lieu of taxes that we would otherwise receive.
So what does the article achieve? It allows the town manager, although I think in this case it probably allows the maybe it allows Wenham on our behalf to negotiate with a solar company to
let them use the roof for their solar panels in exchange for fees, as well as the revenue that, or the electricity that it will generate for our building.
So technically, it allows the town to accept payments from the company in exchange for their use of the roof.
Right.
So in a roundabout way, we're agreeing that to let someone use the roof of the library. We're allowing a company to use the roof of the library
for a fee.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take that. I'll learn something about it. This requires Wenham's approval also, I assume.
Yeah, I assume they would have to have a similar warrant article on their town meeting.
Yeah.
And the last one, the conservation restriction on Patton, is that going to be gone?
Yeah,
Nick, did you figure that out? Like what they
well,
were?
I think they're going to talk about it tonight. I think it's either going to be, I'm pretty sure it's going to be removed, but there was some talk that it may have to stay on the warrant and just be no action. But I think they're actually going to remove it.
But that's what they're talking about tonight. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, from what I heard, that it sounded to me like it wasn't even clear what restrictions they were talking about at Homestead. And it sounded like it, you know, at a minimum, it probably was not right for people to be voting on in, you know, a month and a half.
To the extent there's nothing to write, I will take that one. It looks like I also have two, so if anybody wants to give me any others, I'm happy to take some more.
If I get screwed up, Valerie, I will donate mine.
Okay.
So the CPC increase from 2 to 3% is not going forward?
No, they're not. They don't want to confuse things or try and because they're contributing more to the town hall. They don't want the two to be conflated, so they're just not doing it at all, and they'll address that later.
Okay.
Which I think makes sense, and it's also, especially because you can't necessarily use that increased. If I've got this correct, and I think I do, that you can't necessarily use all of that for debt service. The increase in the CPA tax, whatever it is. So it really would just allow them to spend more on other projects. And it's not like it's clear what those other projects would be. At least that was my understanding. But I also agree that it would totally conflate the town hall issue and really confuse people.
Yeah.
It would, I think it'd be impossible to not look like we were increasing effectively people's taxes to pay for the town hall.
So is that the list?
That's the list.
So what's the schedule again, John? Or Christina, the schedule for
tomorrow?
Okay. I was worried it was tonight.
So our next meeting would be on April 7th. And then the commentary is due by the 16th. So, but we're going to wait to hear back from the Board of Selectmen. So we would have a meeting on the 7th, maybe on the 14th as well. And I'm saying probably. And there could also potentially be a joint one if we wanted to do any sort of joint meeting with the BOS and find out their schedule.
When is I know Joe said he was going to issue the articles to us, but I can't remember what the day was.
Friday, perhaps.
This Friday. Okay, great. Thank you.
Maybe. That's the goal. Yes. And then there's this potential for 550 Highland.
Yeah.
Is that tax issue again?
It is, yeah. So, I mean, I think the only way that, yeah, I mean, I think first of all, because it wasn't timely, the only way it gets added is if they reopen the warrant.
Right.
Which
there'll be political pressure.
Yeah, it's and I don't know if there's anything why they were late in filing a citizen petition, or if it's anyway. If certainly, David, if you in conversations and your sort of alternate hat potential mediator role would certainly be encouraged if there needs to be any solution, at least at this ATM or not.
Yeah. So
there's anything that we as a committee need to do at this point in time, but
when would we know whether the board will reopen and accept this? When is their next meeting?
I
forgot.
The 29th, I want to say.
Okay. So if it's okay with you, I'll inquire what the odds are and see if I can understand what's going on with that. Is that okay?
Yeah, no, that absolutely. That'd be great.
So can we have the draft warrant done by our next meeting?
You mean the position
commentary? You mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's perfect.
So we'll get that this week or within the week. We'll get the final warrant articles, and then we'll each write our pieces and send them. John, do you want to have everybody send them to me? You want me to handle the putting together all the drafts?
If you don't mind, that'd be great.
So whatever you're working on, everyone, if you can send it to me when you're done before our next scheduled meeting, then we can review it. We can review the whole thing all together. Are we going to plan to vote at that point, or we have to wait and see if we're going to have a joint meeting?
Well, I think one of the things I'm sort of interested, is there anything in here that people feel that requires further information or discussion in terms of that we don't know? Because it's funny, like we're almost like we're writing the commentary before taking the vote. But I still don't think it's, you know, it's certainly an easy way to do it, because I think we're pretty I think reading the tea leaves that I think I know how we're going to vote. We're probably going to be pretty unanimous in our votes, I'm guessing. But certainly for any of these, if people feel like something is something we should discuss further, invite people to any future meetings, or for that matter, or if there's, you know, items here that we need more information, we should probably talk about that, because then it's certainly something we would want to do for our next meeting. I think we should plan on, if we don't have a joint meeting before then, plan on voting all of these at our next meeting, if that makes sense.
Right. The only potential controversial issue, I think, is that island issue. If it matures and if it remains and requires a vote, I think that'll be perhaps a subject of debate by us. Yeah, no, and I think that's one of those things I think we should cross that bridge when we come to it. Yeah.
I don't think anything else raises any questions for me.
Yeah, and you know, and maybe here's a you know, if everyone can have their commentary done, or at least in a part where we can then review it before the next meeting and we vote, then if, you know, people disagree with it or have a contrary opinion, certainly we will discuss at our next meeting, and we'll vote accordingly.
Yeah, we can adjust our commentary.
Yeah, and exactly. It's not only that, because I think it's not necessarily just how we're voting. It's also what we're saying, which is, you know, probably this year as important to a lot of these votes, because I think they are probably going to be, you know, fairly uniform and unanimous. But I think it's what we say that becomes important.
Ready to jump ahead, but I've got like 6 minutes before I have to jump off.
Oh yeah, that's right. You've got we had to start a little bit later.
Sorry,
no, that's okay. Unfortunately we couldn't start at 6 this meeting.
But I did send around minutes. I don't know if anyone had a chance to look at any of them, but
yes, I had a comment. Let me a second go back to them.
I had some comments on the first one, and the others were okay for me.
I was generally okay. How do we want to do this? Because I know you've got a hard stop at 8.
Let's see, which one did Nick have?
Yeah, maybe if we can quickly. Nick.
The one for 224. Excuse me. Yeah, 224. Number 2, paragraph 2. It says here, with regard to the building committee, Nick Tenson reported that the finance to us that Wenham had hired somebody who will be doing outreach and social media to educate residents. What I think what it needs to say is that the town hall building committee hired someone from Wenham to do that, and you can put her name in. It's Kristen Alexander.
I did see that too, yeah.
Kristen with a K or a C, do we know?
K, I think.
Okay. Yep, Town Hall Building Committee hired Kristen Alexander.
Correct. It doesn't matter whether she's from Wenham or not. It's irrelevant.
Okay.
Nick, just as an aside, where did the Town Hall Committee get the funding? Was that a prior, the power to hire?
Oh, the power to hire. I think they put it into their
charge, maybe.
Yeah, you know, where they do their soft costs is what they call them. Things for their project manager they have, and architects and that type of thing.
Okay, thank you.
Christina, did you say you had a comment on one of the?
I have a bunch of comments actually on the 2.9 one. That's probably going to take too long.
224, then no one else has any substantive. I just had some, you know, grammatical changes basically.
Yeah, no, I saw, yeah, all your changes, Valerie. Do we want to try to go ahead and approve all the ones with the 2.9 ones?
Sure.
I so move.
You don't need me necessarily to approve them, right? I can always go back and check, or one of you can just let me know which ones got approved. But I guess, I sent you guys the ones with my changes.
Yeah.
Or we just wait till next time.
Yeah, I mean, we could approve right now 210, 224, and 310.
Why don't we do that? Why don't we just, yeah. I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes of joint meeting on February 10th, our meeting on February 24th, and our meeting on March 10th, 2021.
So moved. With the...
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Dave Wanger, aye.
Christina Shank Hargrove, aye.
Nick Tenson, aye.
John Prulidge, aye. All right, and then we will table discussion on February 9th.
I know, I'll be right there. 224, 310, and what was the other one?
210.
210.
210. Okay, perfect. Approved.
Have a good evening, Valerie.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Sorry.
thanks, Valerie.
All right, bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Sort of related.
I have an 8 o'clock meeting with Valerie.
No. Denied.
It's going to require you to go back to school, David. Why don't we turn, because it's sort of related to the commentary, to the forecast that I circulated. I'm going to go into a lot of detail, but I did make a fair amount of changes to sort of streamline it. But I can walk everyone through sort of what I did here. In fact, if I can do this, let me try to actually share it on my screen. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
And now it may be easier to follow along with the one that I sent earlier. But so really what I did is I took that, let me switch to this tab. The forecast we've been working on, I added in the FY22, which is effectively, it's going to have a few tweaks to it, but it basically matches what was presented in our budget. It's going to change. Like right now, it shows that there's an override, so that's going to be tweaked once we get the final from Diane and Joe next week or later this week. And then originally we had it going out to, really just going out to 2 years because the third year was FY22. So I added another year to it. Few things I need to confirm, for example, the debt exclusions. We'll talk about the debt part in a minute. But what I've also done is added another layer of detail. I tried to sum everything up on, town operating expenses. I did break it out a little bit. That was why I had that random question for Diane, because I wanted to make all the numbers match. I think same thing with sort of school expenses. And this is really to get it so it matches line items where the way the town presents it, in budget books, et cetera. I think for the consumption of a lot of people, we could close up these tabs so they don't need to see these line items. And a lot of the assumptions, for example, like the town operating expenses, we look at it, we can historically look at personnel and operating expenses. But we're actually driving the future projections just off of a sort of top line growth factor. Because for some of these things, it's too hard to, personnel operating, you can drive that off a growth factor. Things like warrant articles, which is, it's highly variable. It depends on the year. Sometimes we're spending a lot on them. Sometimes we're not spending that much at all. Even more so because we've been using, free cash for them. At any rate, little more detailed there because I think there's certain things we may want to look at, driving certain assumptions, whether it's for this or a future iteration. When we look back, and I think having like personnel broken out and looking at the trends there make a lot of sense. Not to bore you with the details. Another thing I did was, Nick may be the one that'll appreciate this the most. We had previously looked at sort of we're trying to base our assumptions off of an average percentage. I put a CAGR in there instead, the growth rate, which I think is a better way probably to look at it. Just so we're not, especially when it comes down to like taking the average of a percent that is highly variable, it breaks down a little bit. For example, like other revenue and offsets. Those are trends that are harder to look at on a sort of year-by-year basis. But then sort of the final thing that I want people to, we don't have to go into detail here, but I think this is what's going to drive the whole thing, is that I sort of up-leveled it to these scenarios where, so for each of these assumptions that drive the actual model, I started to come up with, and some of this is throwing stuff up against a wall. So it's not, it's something I think we should, before we finalize this, everyone should sort of take a look at it and think about it. But coming up with a, what do we think the sort of best guess is? Like this is the original one, was the original ones that pretty close to what Marissa had put in there. Best guess, and I made some tweaks here. And it was sort of an alternate guess. And then it was like, okay, what if you look at extremes, like best case and worst case? These then fuel the sort of individual forecasts. But then I think really you want to upload, upload this to what's the tax rate and what's the, does it result in an override, as a way to summarize this. And, one of the takeaways for me was looking at this, that you're looking at, as constituted in this model, you're looking at, pretty significant tax increases and certainly override situations in all but like the sort of best case scenario. And I think the question is this becoming digestible enough for people to have this attached to our commentary? Or do we need, further work to get there? I think that's the main question I want to pose, as well as, without digging into all the assumptions, but if we want to do that now, we certainly can. But we would certainly by the 16th, by the time we print the commentary, want to have one of our next two meetings a discussion on whether we think the assumptions are valid or not. Because it's definitely a work in progress. I mean, just looking at updating the FY22 numbers, a lot of those were different from assumptions that Marissa had made, and we had made, 6 months ago. Certainly about, state aid and, revenue and offsets. Anyway.
Just seeing this, that's incredibly helpful. Just being able to see, like, if you assume this, if you assume a little bit different, if you assume it's worse, they all come up with, you're going to have overrides unless it's really the best case scenario. Just the fact
what is it that's driving that best case scenario?
It is
5% increase in property value. Okay.
Well, but really it's school expenses at 3%, and town at 2.25%. And if you look at, and this is where it becomes, let me switch here, not to give anyone vertigo, but so we're talking about 2.25% at, on the town side. Well, if you look at like the CAGR for the last 5 years, like it's been at 3.6%. So like that 2.5% growth is, that's hard just on the town side. And then, certainly the school's been at 5.6%.
Just
3% is not easy. That's sort of, but you do that and that gets you to where you're not, but you need that kind of, one thing you can do by sort of plugging in different assumptions is almost finding that break-even point where what would those expense rates have to be to just avoid an override going forward. I think that's where the power of this kind of model is that, you start looking at this as okay, we need to have goals for the town and the school in terms of what our expense rates, you know, should be. And because clearly if they're 3.6 and 5.6% on the town and the school side respectively, like we're always going to have overrides. Short of, you know, some sort of, you know,
from my perspective, I think this is excellent and should be disseminated along with our commentary, with whatever editorial explanations, defining the guesses, etc. I think the sooner it becomes in the public domain, the better. And let's see what kind of pushback we get from it, what objections there might be. So I think this is wonderful.
Yeah, great, thank you. No, I mean, I think that's the right idea, is that it's is getting this out there, using it in our commentary, and then getting feedback on it. And because it's one of those things where it'll be a constantly evolving document. Because one of the things that's not in here is, you know, which is potentially very important, is that if you look at the it's not necessarily important to the override, but we don't have the debt, sort of future debt modeled in there right now. I think I can add, I may be able to add a couple of years worth of, you know, current debt. If I don't, there may be a couple future columns. I don't have the correct number in there because I added that. But, you know, if we, in terms of, like, you know, for example, town hall is not modeled in here right now. And yes, it may be a debt exclusion, so it wouldn't necessarily affect your Prop 2.5, but it would certainly affect your tax rate. And other projects that, even with debt exclusions on those projects, could, you know, is still going to add, even if with long-term financing, is going to add, you know, X amount to your budget and X amount to your tax rate every year. So maybe that's maybe one other thing I might add would be, you know, hey, if we added this much, even with a debt exclusion, if we added this much, you know, annual debt service, this is what it would also do your tax rate above what we're spending right now.
John, if I may, I don't mean to complicate things, and I maintain what I said a moment ago, but it just occurred to me, notwithstanding the debt exclusion issue, might this become a controversial issue in terms of voting the town hall project?
Do you mean, will it make people?
Will it frighten people? Will it make them more cautious?
Yeah.
It might. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I that's sort of the reality of the situation.
Right.
But I think it also, in some sense, I think we have to quantify it. And this helps, you know, when we say it's only going to add this much to debt service, and it's you know, so that's, and I think we need to quantify that in our commentary, specifically what it would add to that.
I think Nick will do
maybe
that.
It should actually just be modeled in there as an assumption.
Yeah. I think Nick will do that. I just like FinCom to consider the timing of the public release. That's all. Yeah,
no, that's fair. Because I wouldn't want to, as much as I want to get this out to the public, I certainly wouldn't want to prejudice that specifically compared to other projects.
Right. So
it's not fully baked.
I'm suggesting we just collectively think about it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really, it's a fair point, because it's not that I want to keep this from anyone while contemplating the town hall renovation, but I also don't want to unfairly prejudice it. if these are going to be shocking numbers to people that have never seen this before, because they've just never seen this before.
I mean, in a sense, it makes it, I mean, not having the town hall building project in here in a way is better, because it points out that if we have to do a Prop 2.5 override in the future, it's not because of the town hall building project. I mean, that's coming. I mean, that's what I see from this, is we're going to have Prop 2.5 override coming in the future, almost no matter
regardless, what. Right.
Almost
and
no
it's not
what. So, you know, doing the town hall building project right now is not going to save us. Not doing it is not going to save us from that.
You're absolutely right, Christine, which is, it's almost better that it's not modeled in here, because it's not like, you don't want anyone to look at this and be like, oh, this is all because of the town hall project, which is, couldn't be further from the truth.
But Christina, you're absolutely correct. My caution, and I just want people to consider it, is persons who are opposed to this project may not seize upon the accuracy of your statement, Christina, and may say, look where we're headed. How can we afford $9 million, right. $8 million?
Right, it's just too much altogether.
Right,
yeah.
It's just an emotional appeal, not a factual, accurate appeal. Yeah. That's all I'm asking us to consider.
Right, and a very valid concern, like, oh, look, here is our tax rate. You can see it going up and up and up. Why would we add another project? Right. Our taxes are already going up too much. Is also correct, yeah.
So I just want us to consider it for determination next meeting, perhaps.
Yeah, no, I think that's, yeah, that's a really, it's something we should all think about. And you know, there's still work that needs to be done on this anyway, so it's not like that work won't continue to be valuable, whether we you know, essentially are publishing it around the ATM or later in the year.
Is your objective to put out the scenario or the forecast, or all of it?
I think, I mean, certainly if it was, I think I'd make the entire, you know, digital file essentially available. I don't know if we do that on our FinCom portal on the website or whatever, but I think for anything that's actually printed, I would probably do whatever our best guess is. We think the best case of assumptions, that forecast, and then a sort of the scenarios tab which effectively has, it's like a sensitivity analysis.
Right. When you throw out the numbers from the forecast, it's a lot of numbers, and I think it's confusing for people. The scenario is a nice summary, but maybe that's a bit too simple. But that's where you should, so there's going to have to be I think you're absolutely right. I think all of it would be helpful, so people who feel comfortable can dive into the details. But there's going to have to be some narrative with this so that people understand what these pieces mean, or more importantly, in the looking at that Prop 2.5, essentially, what does that mean? Because I think that's the piece that people are probably, I know it's been taking me a while to understand it, but that's not always a good scenario, I'm not necessarily a good barometer. Maybe much quicker.
So there has to be a glossary of terms. No, seriously.
No, yeah, I don't think you're wrong. No.
And then I remember, John, you gave us a tutorial on Prop 2.5 a few years ago. So to Nick's point, if you can just summarize as part of this.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, and actually I'm going to just write myself a note there. I think that's, you know, it's having that sort of, you know, Prop 2.5 in a nutshell, which because I you know, even when you've sort of dug into it, there are times I have to check myself on like, do I even have this completely correct? Between debt exclusions and, because then you get all these connotations like, oh, well, it's a debt exclusion, but then effectively it just doesn't count. Like, no, you pay for it.
Yeah, you don't have to pay
formula. Right? You're still paying for it. It's not free.
It's really looking at what the drivers are, and the drivers are that the spending is going up at a certain rate, and it's faster than 2.5%. No, actually, it's going up faster than the value of the homes. And that's really what it is.
Well, right, exactly. As well as you value the homes in new growth, and that you can be a little above that 2.5% because of new growth and appreciation, but if it's much higher than that, it's always going to catch up with you. And in terms of a tax rate, I think a lot of people know about the 2.5, but they don't realize that it's also the 25, which is the hard rate. And like that's coming into play for Wenham soon.
Well, we're coming up to over $20 per thousand.
Yeah, I mean, once you get the 2 as the first digit, you're in the red zone, and forced cuts become a real reality.
John, when you on the bottom of the summary page, you go out 3 years beyond 22, but the top of the page is predicated on a one-shot view, correct? That is, median home value remains the same throughout A, B, C, D, and E.
Yeah, that was actually something I had, the median home value. I sort of noticed that right before I was completing this, just literally like 6 p.m. today, is that it's the median home value for this year's budget. So it's like you're using this year's, dollars in a sense. You could then build something in to take, for example, we have, I didn't have them handy, but median home values from prior years, because it changes every year. And like I want to say the median home value was, in fact, if I did find it, even like 4 years ago, it was like in the 4s.
But you're making different assumptions about the increase in property valuation.
Correct. That's what I think. If you tied it to that, you could simply, if you start off with the original being at 549,
you should grow the median home value by a similar,
make it proportionally 3%.
Right, exactly. Because you don't want to hold that. I totally agree. Because if you look at it, if you look at the actual forecast, it really, because you have this doubling effect where not only like for tax bill, you're not only going to hit by the rate changing, you're going to hit by the fact that your assessment's changing too.
Right. And that change will affect the results.
It'll affect the tax bill on the median home.
Yeah.
It won't affect anything else.
Okay.
This number will just grow up if you just change. Because right now, the way that Marissa originally built the model, it was based on just one value. And she had actually a value that was 613,000.
Right.
But I just changed it to whatever the current one was. But really that should grow, because that's part of the thing, is that your tax rate can grow. But if your tax rate is growing at the same time your property value is, then the average tax bill is getting hit, 2 ways. Like you could even hold the tax bill constant, but if your value is going up, you're still paying more taxes.
May I make a suggestion that you just check the accuracy with Diane or the assessor as to median home value. I have some memory it was a higher figure.
I thought it was something.
That was the thing that, see, Marissa had in there 613,000.
That's
right. That's what I have in my head.
And then I went to look because I wanted to actually do it year by year. And I should have just actually asked. I'll follow up with Diane on this. That I should have added this to the list. But then I saw something in, I can't remember if it was the handbook or the presentation that, bear with me for a second. Yeah, it was in the slide deck, and she's going to send the most recent one that had the median home value is like 2016. It was like 444,000, and current year it was 549,000. Which I agree, like that I thought it was higher than that. But I'll follow up with Diane on that.
The capital expenditures, we're just assuming a static number.
Yeah, and in fact, we've actually got to plug in the actual number for this year.
That's what I was concerned because it's going to be different than the warrant.
Well, no, yeah, that was what I was saying to Diane. That's why I need the actual revised.
Oh, okay.
Because this is basically the snapshot view where we stood on that Saturday meeting, which still had the 191 because the school budget hadn't changed, and it still had a $500,000 placeholder. That we know the warrant article is only going to come out at 338, and then there might be a couple other tweaks. So this will be exactly match whatever's in our budgeted ATM.
And the free cash usage, I don't know what the basis of that.
The basis of that assumption is, and this is something where we certainly could want to play around with assumptions, is effectively it's saying that our capital expenses, we would just use free cash. So in prior years, it also included transfers. They were effectively sort of cash neutral. So for example, they would show up in this. This is why, if you can look on screen, like for example, like last year's budget had a huge line item here, but it also had a huge free cash use because a lot of the transfers were coming out of free cash. And then the difference was that we were funding capital out of free cash. The assumption going forward is effectively capital is going to be at about 500,000 and free cash is going to be at, and we're going to use it free cash for those sort of shorter term capital needs. That may not be a really good assumption. So we probably, at least one of the cases, should really draw down that capital number, or at least not use capital to, it's got to show up somewhere, but not use necessarily free cash to fund.
Right, because in columns D and E, there's a disparity between the capital expenditure assumption and the use of free cash.
Right. Yeah, and effectively, for example, like best case was, is not necessarily, it's sort of best case in terms of like tax, but that would be like best case to like avoid an override. Part of that's actually using $750,000, basically using some free cash to draw down capital. Not that we'd ever recommend that.
But the capital remains the same.
Right. So what we're saying is you're not using free cash just to pay for capital. You're using it actually to pay for some of your to sort of offset operating expenses. So for example, if you change this to 500,000, everything will flow, which you probably should. Still avoid an override, but not by as much. And just so everyone knows, these other case assumptions that I made, they weren't, I probably spent the least amount of time questioning these assumptions. This is where I think most of our work has to be agreeing on really what constitutes worst case, best case, best guess,
right.
or whatever scenario we want to spell out. Because I think it could be, it's not necessarily a best or a worst case. It's okay, here now we're financing it with free cash, which obviously is not a great thing to do. Or here we're not spending free cash on our capital expenditures. So, for example, draw this, we don't use free cash at all. Well, now you get to override. So we can, we can come up with whatever cases and scenarios and whatever we think, because it's really in some sense, it's then about not only coming up with the scenario, but it's the commentary that goes with it.
Right.
So for example, you don't, use, if we're spending this much in capital, but we're not funding out of free cash, then, well, the situation's even worse tax-wise.
Right. This is a wonderful working document. I compliment you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I just think it's really something we as a committee it can be a very powerful tool, because I think, and we talked about it, David, and we'll quickly get to sort of the update on that at the on the sort of umbrella meeting earlier.
Yeah.
What we can really do is that, it's not just for, I think we can sort of own this model, but, having this used by, others and as really as a tool, as opposed to, it's not, I mean, you'll appreciate, Nick, it's, projections or saying a projection is the truth is never the case. And, but when I think they become powerful when you use them to like scenarios and you use it to then drive decision making, and really questioning assumptions is and I think that's what has sort of been missing in some of the analysis, is that we don't, everyone's looking at issues in a vacuum as opposed to making, agreeing on assumptions and then finding out what that's going to actually result in. And I think this helps us do this. All right, so so there's some tweaking here, and then I think, well, let's all sort of think about it, and then for discussion at our next meeting, what makes sense in terms of when we release this, how we release this, and publish it, and the timing of that. Because I think that's a really good issue to about and further discuss, David. And certainly, more than welcome for all you to play around with this. And if you've got other thoughts on assumptions, et cetera, or, I mean, the way it works now, you can basically, assuming that the plumbing is correct in the forecast, you basically can plop in whatever assumptions you want and see the results spit out. So definitely play around.
I think I agree that will be great to have available to people, but the important thing is going to be the conclusions that we can draw from it.
Yes.
So, more than just having a summary, I think we need to think about what do we want to say to people. So I see some kind of a report or something, with conclusions that we can draw now that we have this. And then if people want to, and then we can refer to this if people want to be for themselves, they can go to the spreadsheet and use
exactly. Like I think in some sense, it drives our commentary in other areas as well. you know, and I think a lot of it's, you know, future spending levels for, you know, town and for school, and, you know, use of, you know, free cash for, you know, certain things, et cetera. Or even, you know, I think it's useful when you talk about, you know, projects, development, as well as, you know, revenue sources. Like, what really is the bottom line? Okay, if we increase revenue by X, what does that really mean? Because it
should be valuable for the master plan process too, for exactly those reasons.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that's one of the things I sort of thought. It's not only to disseminate to the public, but it's also to other committees and groups too, so that they understand how everything sort of affects each other. And I think the master plan is a perfect example of that.
Very cool. Thanks, guys, for working on that.
Absolutely. So if we want to switch maybe to liaison update, because I think that's last item we had to tackle. So we had the first umbrella meeting earlier this afternoon. Thank you to David for spearheading that, and apologies to Christina. Thank you for bowing out. We had the unusual sort of unfortunate FinCom quorum, accidental quorum.
I sacrificed myself for the committee.
Yes.
Leaving a meeting.
Thank you.
But I promise to return the favor at some point. But just to give you and Nick an update, and certainly jump in here, it was really, you know, sort of talking about, you know, cadence of meetings and the idea that we'd want to meet at least, you know, a few times a year. Not sure it's going to be quarterly, but it might be. So around, you know, we're starting late this year, but it would be some of them tied to, you know, STM and ATM, even before the sort of warrant process begins, so that everyone's on the same page with, you know, issues that the town's going to face, as well as then we sort of went around the room, or I should say the screen, to get people's, you know, various committees sort of input on what will be things that we should sort of work on it as sort of like, you know, deep dives in some of these future sessions. And I think the thematically, there was a lot of it was about, you know, topics that, you know, relate to communication, financial stability for the town, and, you know, master planning and process coordination related to that. A lot of good ideas. And one of the things that Joe is going to, based on all the sort of input that we had, he's going to come up with a sort of running list of things that we want to try to focus on. But, you know, a lot of it, you know, sort of boiled down to how do we communicate, you know, better, get more sort of resident involvement, but also communicate between our boards better. And because we're all sort of looking for the same goal, which is, you know, financial stability for the town. And there are a lot of compromises that have to be made. And they can only be made if sort of people are globally understanding that the issues are all interrelated, as opposed to looking at sort of specific issues in vacuum. I don't know, David, if you want to give your sort of take on it, if there's big thematic things that I missed, because there are a lot of details too on specifics that people brought up, and a lot of sort of great ideas to talk about. But it was certainly, I think it was a good use of time.
I think it was a good start. I don't think there was enough hot air to make the balloon collapse. I mean, the umbrella collapse.
Right.
So I thought it was a good start. Glad it went forward.
So I think it sounded like, I think we agreed the next meeting would be some point in July.
Yes.
The idea was to do it after the town meeting process, but then before the warrant usually gets opened in sort of late August for the STM. And we wanted to certainly have a meeting before, at least a month before that warrant gets open, because just so we can, there aren't necessarily surprises, and also talk about things that we might want to put in front of the town. And I think that in itself is actually a valuable part of this, because I do feel like, a lot of times that warrant sort of like it opens, and then certainly I think from like FinCom's perspective, like, we're sort of sitting with bated breath of what's going to get added. And if we sort of knew before it even got open, here are the likely things that that are going to be on the warrant. Not to mention like talking it through, because a lot of the times this stuff happens, you get these potential articles, and then as you start to go through the process, it becomes very clear that like this stuff is not ready to be voted on by the town, because it hasn't been, certainly a lot of times with, zoning and bylaw things, which, have those things take a lot of time, and you need to have a lot of public input. So I think it'll be valuable to have, servicing these issues beforehand. I was definitely encouraged by it. In terms of, I think that was the only thing I had in terms of other updates. Joe talked about finance director search, you saw the Joe had sent around the patent homestead, the license agreement, and had gotten an in-depth chance to review it, but they did add language around additional language around termination, which I think will be helpful, certainly in the case of if there's a potential sale beyond just the revenue stuff that was already in there. But anyway, we should certainly, everyone should take a look at it when they get a chance, just so at least we know what the deal is going forward, and then we'll see what happens once they're open for business.
I took a quick look. Thank you, Christina, for distributing that. I didn't see the change. I'll have to go back in terms of termination options. I thought there was still a disparity between the freedom of the licensee to get out of it, whereas our ability to terminate was conditioned upon assertions of non-compliance. So I thought there were, that disparity still exists.
There's still some disparity, but it was non-compliance. There was also, if revenues weren't at a certain level, I think there was some mutuality associated with that. And then there was saying that if we were selling the property, that we would have the right to, that it wouldn't interfere with our being able to sell or otherwise dispose of the property.
Okay. Well, I'll take another look. Sure.
Yeah. Probably not perfect, but a lot better than where it started.
Right.
It's really the flexibility. I think it's key for us, so that hopefully this will, this arrangement with Incubate will work. But if it doesn't, we'll, the town will have the flexibility to do what it's got to do. That's all I had on my end. If anyone else had any updates.
I sent out that summary on the town hall. I don't know if anybody had a chance to look at it, or if they have any questions, or should I elaborate verbally?
No.
No, it's enough, huh? Okay.
Yeah, I looked at what you wrote, or you know, what you sent. It was a good summary. Sounds like it's moving forward, and
It'll be interesting to see how this Christine Alexander does in terms of being able to get information and distribute it to people.
Oh, the one, and I don't know if this was, when was the last time, I don't know when the last time the building committee met, but one of the things talked about at the last Board of Selectmen was, although there originally was a thought about getting approval at ATM, but doing a vote later, I think the vote's going to be immediately after ATM now on the debt exclusion.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
It almost has to be because of the bid. It's really the big issue is the bid.
That's exactly what's driving it, Nick. Is the thought was we could take our time and potentially do, you know, allow for a longer period of publicity, but you're not going to have those bids. We can't use the old bid. It's going to effectively expire. I mean, we're lucky that we can still use the old bid.
Correct. And if it goes beyond the end of May, we've lost that. And we don't know what that's going to mean, but the likelihood is with the amount of increase in material costs that we could see a jump.
Right. So I think that's the right decision.
I have a couple things for my BOS liaison meeting. 133 Essex, there's a potential project happening there. They've asked for a preliminary meeting with the planning board. And the town has notified everyone who's expressed any interest in that project. You know, people have been writing in.
Right.
So they've let people know that that meeting's coming up. There hasn't been any filing yet, so there's no action that the planning board will be taking, but it's their first.
Where is that, Christine?
Where is 133 Essex?
Yeah.
I think it's over. I guess I don't know. I mean, over near Essex, right in that area, almost.
22, that area.
Yeah.
And what kind of is it? A home? Is that what it is, or?
No. So they bought it's a big piece of land, and there's a rumor that they want to build a housing area or something, like a bigger building project.
Is that the over 55 project?
It could be something like that. Yeah. But like I said, there's no filing yet, so we don't know yet what it's going to be. But the neighbors are concerned. I know a lot of the neighbors are concerned that there's going to be this big building project, and I think there was even, a rumor, I guess, that they'll have to dynamite ledge area, or everyone's all upset about the big mess they're going to make.
Yeah, so that's the Tobacco Road. Yeah, no, I think we'd seen some stuff on that. There's certainly I think a petition floating around. If it's for that the senior housing. But was it going to be 40B, or was it going?
Tobacco Road. Is that right where the Meadowbrook Farm is? The food stand?
It's near Meadowbrook, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's not as close to Essex as I thought. Tobacco Road.
Oh, that's Essex Street. I know what you're talking about. That's what I was trying to understand, is where it was. There's two parcels. There's one is the Meadowbrook Farms, and the other one is the farm that just plants hay a little further on. But anyway, I understand now where it is. Thank you.
Well, we know that the town hall is going to be on the May warrant. Joe talked to the school committee about having them do some kind of formal support for the town hall building project. And they seem amenable to that.
What committee?
The school committee.
Why would they be involved with the town hall?
They're not, but just sort of a show of support to kind of counteract the people in the community who might think like, oh, you know, we need money for the schools. We don't want to spend money on a building project. So if the school committee itself says, we
are in favor of this,
we agree, you know, it's not going to affect us.
No, I mean, I think it's a positive, you know, positive statement from them. I mean, it's
yeah.
You know, probably couldn't even ask for that 4 years ago. I mean, I think it's it makes sense because like some people are looking at that. You know, a lot of people voted because they were thinking, well, you know, this is going to be less money spent on schools, and it's not that we can necessarily spend everything on anything, but it's, you know, we've got to make compromises, and it can't all be about schools. So I think that's you know, whether it sways anyone or not, who knows? But I think it's certainly a positive statement.
I think we already kind of mentioned the audit report. I think.
Oh, thank you, Christina. That was totally on my list, and I totally forgot about it. But go ahead. You may have more information than.
No, I don't think so. I think my impression was that it was not. I think this is what Joe said, that, and Marissa maybe even when she was still here, that, you know, there were recommendations that they made, but essentially it was a pretty clean report. There are no big issues, no big problems.
Yeah, and it was talked about at the last Board of Selectmen meeting. Normally what we would have done, I think it ended up being the timing of when we actually got it, as well as the timing of when we had our joint budget discussion. Normally we would do a joint meeting with the auditors to go over the report. So the auditors were at the last Board of Selectmen meeting. And I had asked them a few questions, but then we're going to have a separate meeting with the auditors that I will set up. So they will attend one of our FinCom meetings, so that now that everyone has the audit, we'll have a chance to go through it. And then we can ask any questions of them. So that'll be a future, I'm thinking we'll probably do it probably late April. It'll probably be that meeting after we've finished our commentary, and while they're printing it, we usually have one before the actual annual meeting. Maybe we'll invite them to that meeting so that we can, you know, ask any questions. I don't think it's, there was nothing necessarily controversial, and like Christina said, it's effectively the usual recommendations, some of which will be followed, some of which, you know, as in years past, auditors make the recommendations because they're auditors, but as a small town, we've got to make, you know, judgments about whether the risk is great enough to actually follow those recommendations. It seemed the responses from the town were all reasonable. But anyway, we should all read it, and then we should all, you know, we'll certainly have a meeting with the auditors so that we can, you know, do our due diligence with them. But I don't think it's, you know, similar to prior years. I don't think there's any, you know, cause for concern. There certainly wasn't anything that stood out to me in the management letter. But we'll have them in a future meeting so that we can ask any questions.
That was it for me.
All right. Well, unless there's anything further, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor. Start with you, David.
I guess so. Yes.
Nick Tenson, yes.
Christina Shankar-Grove, yes.
John Prulich, yes. We are adjourned.
Have a good evening, all. Be well.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Okay.
Good night.